Hello, my name is Meredith Marshall, and I'm a proud member of the Nanticoke Lenni Lenape Tribal Nation of New Jersey. Today we are broadcasting live from Germantown, which was once known as Nidabangkok, a village within Lenapehoking, the ancestral homeland of the Lenni Lenape people. For thousands of years, our ancestors thrived here, living in harmony with the land along the Delaware and the Schuylkill rivers. This land is more than a place. It is a sacred connection woven deeply into who we are as a people. It carries the stories of our ancestors, their resilience, wisdom, and spirit. Let us take a moment to honor the truth of this history. The Lenni Lenape people have faced immense challenges, displacement, erasure, and loss. But through it all, we have endured. We are still here, not as echoes of the past, but as living proof of survival, carrying forward our culture, traditions, and stories. Acknowledging this land means recognizing the fullness of its history, the richness of its presence, and the responsibility we all share for its future. To truly honor Lenapehoking is to support Indigenous sovereignty, celebrating our living cultures and actively working towards healing the injustices of the past and present. This is an invitation for all of us to walk together on a path of reconciliation, to nurture this land and to create a future where Indigenous voices are heard, respected, and celebrated. Wanishi, thank you for listening and for being a part of this journey towards truth and healing.
Great day, great day.
Hey, welcome everybody.
We got a great show for you today, right? You know what? We need to we're gonna have to come. We're gonna pick a day, right? Well, me, you're gonna come in here, and we're gonna just stay in here all day long until we figure out all of the knickknacks as far as the different streaming and all of that. But we are definitely glad that you are here, and always can listen to us at gtownradio.com.
Yes, absolutely. Maybe put that in the YouTube. Let them know that they could go to gtownradio.com and participate that way. We're having a little technical difficulties with our live stream to our radio audience today, just letting y'all know what's going on. But welcome to Save Our Ancestors Indigenous Radio. Today we'll be exploring the layered complexities of being recognized, identity, and unity amongst Indigenous people.
Yes, and that's a heavy topic, right?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
But it definitely is time for us as a community to start having these conversations, because, you know, it's too much dysfunction, too much division amongst our community, and it stops us from being able to unite, to unify, and to move as one collective unit. I would say something like with unions and the voting power, right? If all Indigenous communities were in alignment with certain principles and would align our vote to work with that, we would definitely have more authority, right, and more power with respects to our community.
I know. I kind of say it reminds me of like, you can fight with your sibling, but then, if somebody from up the street come, you don't let them talk about your sister, or your brother. Only you could do it. It's like our internal problems, which are not all our fault by any means. This is by design.
For sure.
That division is holding us back from the greater good of unity, that's in building community. So today you can kind of think of this as, I wouldn't call it a 101, but.
Well, you know what? We're going to explore, right? We're going to, the tagline I see right here says, exploring the layered complexities of recognition, identity, and unity among indigenous peoples of the United States.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Right. So we're going to be covering recognition, what federal versus state is, and tribes that are non-recognized. Also, indigenous identity versus tribal enrollment. We'll also be talking about the Bureau of Indian Affairs, also known as the BIA, and their influence, and how colonization fuels division among indigenous communities. So those are just some of the topics we'll be going over today. So y'all make sure y'all stay tuned.
Yeah, for sure. Though that's a hitter right there, right?
Right,
Man,
right.
And actually, I think that we chose this because we think that talking about these things will help to start to build bridges in our community, right? And also to inform our neighbors, right? Some of the things that we deal with and why it's so difficult for us to walk, you know what I mean? And unless we got a feather on our head, or ribbon skirt on, they don't even acknowledge us as indigenous, native half the time.
Right. And I think for me, like what kind of led me to think of, this being a topic is working behind the scenes with guests and how, certain people don't want to work with this person or that person. And even being, working with the city on the Urban Indigenous Alliance, how that kind of just fell apart due to division and people that wanted more like BIA rules versus a more non-colonized view. Granted, when working with the city and the government, it's going to be colonized because we're working with the city and the government. But
yeah,
and it is layered. It's so layered, and all we can do is do our best. So let's hop right in. So recognition, I'm sure people have heard that term, what it means to be state recognized, federally recognized. My tribe, the Nanticoke Lanai Lenape, we are state recognized. But then we have our sister tribe, the Nanticoke. I'm pretty sure they're federally recognized.
They are.
Yeah.
They're state and federal, right?
Yeah, they're state and federally recognized. So, you got the same families and half of them are recognized and half of them are not. And I'm doing air quotes. Y'all can't see me, but air quotes recognized. We should say recognized by the government, because, our families know our lineage. And that's,
So I know your tribe is state, but the next tribe over is federal. But don't you have family and cousins in both tribes also?
You can only be in one, but I have family in both tribes.
So you could be in either tribe, but they only allow you to be in one?
Yeah, well, that's just the rules. You can only be in one.
Wow.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I'm either able to join that one, or I might be one generation too low to be the Nanticoke. I'm not sure. I would have to look at my family tree.
Okay.
But I'm pretty sure it probably would be a fourth for the Nanticoke.
And that's the blood quantum.
And that's the blood quantum.
All right, but we're not going to talk about that. We're going to talk about recognition right now.
Yeah. We're not talking about the blood quantum. And that's just, and so that's the thing. Like the Nanticoke tribe and the Lenape tribe are two different tribes that, you can't join, but it's separating my quarter Nanticoke and then the other side of the Lenape. So, I mean, I feel like that's an issue for a lot of indigenous people. You might have your one parent in one tribe, and you have to choose. You can't be enrolled in both.
That's wild. That's wild. And actually, when you when you have children, right, the children have to choose. They you know what, we're moving past where we were supposed to start at, right? Because again, this is the dysfunction that the colonialism causes with respects to identity, categorization, but specifically recognition, right? Because we're talking about recognized federal versus state. Let's actually define. I took it from you.
Oh, okay. I was like,
I took the notes from
that
you.
That was fast.
Yeah. So let's actually define federal recognition.
Okay.
Right? Matter of fact, you want to read it and then we could talk about it?
Okay.
Sure. Go ahead.
So, Here we go. What is federal recognition? Federal recognition is the U.S. government's official acknowledgement that a Native American tribe exists as a sovereign political body. Okay, we're going to start over. It establishes a nation-to-nation relationship between the tribe and the federal government.
Okay.
So a nation-to-nation relationship between the tribe and the federal government.
Mm-hmm. But you know what? So it's a few things that us general people, right, would not know based off of the words that they would use, and we want to make sure that you understand exactly what they're saying as a community.
Right.
Okay. All right. So federal recognition is the United States official acknowledgement that a Native American tribe exists as a so-called, and again, these are their words, right? And so I'm gonna air quote the words that we need to make sure we're paying attention to. Mm-hmm. Exist as a so-called sovereign political body. Now, the problem with the so-called, when I say sovereign, right, and let's go down to what that means, right? This is only for federal tribes. Mm-hmm. Sovereign status is limited with respects to federal recognition, right? Sovereign status and limited self-governance. Federal law recognizes a form of limited sovereignty for Native American tribes, meaning tribes are seen as domestic dependent nations.
Okay.
That status gives them inherent power to self-govern, but those powers exist within the framework of the United States law.
Okay, so they like a genie. It's like
they have all of the power in the world, but in this teeny tiny little spot.
Yes.
And at any given time, the United States can put you back in your genie bottle and shut up.
Right.
You can't nothing.
And that's happening right now to a couple of tribes.
It's happening right now to a couple of tribes. We'll talk about that later. So I just want everybody to understand that when you get federal recognition, you are actually, as a tribe, placing yourself under the authority of the United States, and thereby under the rules and the laws of the United States. Mm-hmm. And so, and we'll be moving forward from there. You know, let's just leave it there for now.
Right.
and let's talk about what state recognition is.
Right. Okay. So state recognition.
Oh, did I take it from you?
Yes, you did.
Oh, sorry. Here you go.
I don't see it on this one either.
You got it over here. Here, let me get it. So state recognition is basically the same as federal recognition. However, with state recognition, the state authorizes the funding. And so the tribe is under the state constitution.
Right.
And
if you happen to not live in the state where your tribe is, you have nothing to help you out. You know, if you're not federal, you have to be in the state to get the services that the state offers.
Okay. And so from there, moving forward from there, we said that we wanted to talk about a few other things, right?
So now we're going to talk about non-recognized.
Well, before we talk
versus
the federal and the state.
Yes, like what the difference is.
Well, before we talk about that, let's talk about a few more things with respects to the federal and the state.
Okay.
Because it's like, well, wait a second. Who, and this is our next point, who authorizes these tribes? Mm-hmm. You know, like how does a tribe actually get to become acknowledged, right? You know, or go underneath the federal recognition.
Right. Okay. Well, the government. So it's the U.S. Department of Interior.
Okay.
Acts of Congress. Administrative acknowledgement by the Bureau of Indian Affairs, also known as the BIA once again. Office of Federal Acknowledgement.
Okay.
And federal court rulings.
Okay. So all of this is based off of what the colonizing system established for how they will control the at one time sovereign, right, or autonomous peoples, and then now they have control.
Right, and the administrative process requires tribes to prove these things.
Okay.
Continuous existence as a distinct community, political authority over members, and descent from a historical tribe. So this process is often described as burdensome and biased, favoring paper records over oral histories and traditional governance. Many tribes, especially in the Southeast and East Coast, just in general, and among the Afro-Indigenous peoples, were excluded due to forced removal, assimilation policies, or radical reclassification. Example, being classified as colored instead of Indian or mulatto.
Wow. So there you go right there. Now, and again, it's specifically stated that the Southeast indigenous communities particularly dealt with this.
Yes. It said separately, yes.
And interesting enough, that's one of the things that our brothers and sisters, our cousins on the West Coast and in the plains have to learn about. You know, the erasure of the East Coast native population altogether, from light skin to brown skin and dark skin.
Yeah, well, we were at the front lines,
right?
So you know, we were exposed to colonization hundreds of years before. You know,
man, listen.
So we look like what they might look like 100 years from now. You know what I mean? After so much mixing.
Well, not necessarily, because blood quantum is in effect, and so they won't be in existence.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
No tribe will be.
Well, and that's a lot of the struggle on the East Coast. You know, you have families basically torn apart because you have your grandmom, the mother, and then they have their children, and then once that last one has a baby, then their kids can't be in it. So you literally have generations where they've seen their family wash out if they didn't marry back into the tribe. Like
their cousins. Literally.
Well, if each person, just decided not to go that route, it will only take like
4 generations.
Yeah, 4 to completely
wipe that tribe out.
Yeah.
Not that blood isn't existent. It's just not existent in the way that the system is set up to recognize it.
Right.
And that's a ploy, a trick, right, that the system plays on us in order for us to
get erased.
Yeah, and also in order for us to not pay attention to how we would, as a indigenous communities, repair the erasure, and in a legitimate and in a legal way. Before we get into some more of that, let's talk about the non-acknowledged, the non-recognized, because we said this is what's going on with the federal, and basically the state take everything that we said at the federal level, just take it to the state level, and then we have this other group of indigenous peoples and communities called, unamalgamated or non-recognized, right? And
but wait, we skipping over some things real quick.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
So, what does federal recognition offer? Like, if you're a federally recognized tribe, what are you getting from the government that's so great about being federally recognized? Because it seems like if you're state recognized, you're striving for that stamp of approval from the government. Yeah, it's like please.
That's the first step to
right. And for the most tribes, it's because they want the services.
That's what it is.
Yeah,
that's
they want the services. So this is what you get.
Okay,
you get Indian health services, BIE schools, housing support, legal standing of tribal courts, law enforcement, tax authority, eligibility to hold land and trust through the federal government. Protections under law laws like the Indian Child Welfare Act and Native American Graves Protection and Reparations Act.
Okay, now I would say this to every single one of those, and they can take it away from you whenever they want. And so like so many of our tribes in the West Coast are dealing with right now, where they literally are just stripped the funding away from whole tribes that are, federally recognized.
Well, that's because recognition does not create sovereignty. It just acknowledges it. And you are governing, but it's at the whim of the government. Whenever they want to change their mind, or if we get a different president,
with different agenda,
yesterday's price ain't today's price no more.
Man, I tell you what, as an indigenous community here on the East Coast, we have been dealing with this for 500 years now.
Yeah, I mean, I'll use my tribe as an example. So when Christie was in office, he took away the state recognition, and we had to sue to get it back. Yeah, he just decided he wanted to cut it.
And so again, now as an indigenous community, is this really the way for us to repair and reorganize ourselves, right? We have rights as a people that are not even being discussed, and we haven't even talked about our rights outside of what the United States is offering us. And I think personally, again, you named all of the paperwork reasons, all of the legitimate reasons,
right. So now this is the difference. If you're a state, so some tribes are recognized only as at the state level, like we said, so meaning the state acknowledges them as a tribe, but the federal government does not. So state recognition can provide limited benefits such as access to state programs or minority business status, cultural and educational partnerships, and in some states, land leasing or community grants. It also, if you're an artisan or make anything, if you're state recognized, you can also, put Native American made. Because it is, if you are not and you put that and say it's Native American made, that is a crime. Just FYI, people.
Oh, okay. Hold.
So that's sidebar.
Wait a second. So if I'm not a member of a state tribe and I make a T-shirt, and I put that is a Native American made T-shirt, I will get sued.
Yeah, I mean, if somebody,
yeah.
I mean,
it's illegal to do that.
It's illegal, but people don't really go after it unless it's like blatant. Like on I find on Etsy,
So what? The United States has a copyright on the Native American?
You can't because it's like stealing from people that are actually native, that are craftsmen. So if you aren't that, you can't say that it's made by Native American hands, and it wasn't.
Okay.
So that's kind of
Then we get into the tricky part when we start talking about the natives that chose not to be on any of the roles.
Right. So like and that's what it's like. You lose all benefits if you don't take the blue pill from the government.
Well, okay. Is it a benefit?
I mean, it is a benefit, but you got to kind of weigh at what cost, like the good versus the bad, And we see clearly it completely depends on what government is in place at the moment.
Right. Okay. So
we're going to talk about non-federally recognized tribes.
Okay, good.
In non-state. So thousands of indigenous people belong to non-federally recognized tribes. They're still active, sovereign in practice, and rooted in their homelands, but lack U.S. acknowledgement. These communities often descend from tribes that avoided removal or refused relocation.
Pause. Well, you know what? We're going to get into tribal and indigenous next.
Right.
So everybody remember that. Tribes that avoided removal or refused to relocate. Go ahead.
Maintain ceremonies, language, and governance outside of U.S. definitions.
Ooh.
Face exclusion from protections and resources, and experienced erasure, legal invisibility, and cultural genocide and paper genocide.
And so
my tribe falls under that.
Yes, your tribe does.
So the Nanticoke Lanai Lenape, our community stayed in New Jersey. They did not go to Oklahoma. We remained hidden in plain sight, basically.
Right.
And
as mulatto, as colored,
whatever they wanted to think.
Yep, that's how it went. I mean, because again, remember, not even 200 years ago, there was a Scalp Act on the Lenape people. You know what I mean? And so if you identify as a Lenape, they was literally headhunting for y'all.
Right.
All the way down to the 2-year-old children in the law. This is in their law. And so...
and what's the law?
Yeah. Their law is genocidal practices against indigenous peoples, but their law is their law, our law is our law, and that's what we're going to start getting into in a minute. So, yeah, I think it's time for a break because we talked about the three, right? Federal, state, and then non-federal and non-state recognized.
Like non-recognized by the U.S. just at all. But they've remained connected. They have their family history, and they have been a community in standing since before colonization.
Yeah, interesting. One thing I wanted to put out before we go to break is also said that, and the governance is outside of the United States definitions. And that's really important because...
And that's most of the time a matriarchal...
process, yes. But even still, the United States defines what a native is. The United States defines what an Indian is, right? The United States defines what a tribe is. And so when you use that word, you have to use the definition that the United States developed for that word. And it gives, in doing so, it puts you back underneath the jurisdiction of the United States. However, for non-federally recognized and non-state recognized tribes, there are terms that they can use that are outside of the United States jurisdiction that forces the United States to deal with you on another level of law. And that's what we're going to talk about next with the indigenous versus tribal.
Okay.
All right.
What we playing?
You know what? I'm gonna play Grateful.
Okay.
We're gonna play Grateful because I'm grateful.
By Moo Fresh, y'all.
All right.
Simple things I'm thankful. Sometimes life can be painful. The joy keeps the spirit young and playful. Ain't no hurt making me hateful. Keep the course and stay faithful. When I can't, I know he's able. Lift me up and keep me safe.
jamming to it.
I know, I love this song. You are listening to Germantown Community Radio, 92.9 FM, WGGT-LP, Philadelphia, and online at gtownradio.com. Welcome back, y'all.
Yeah. We get into some things today,
I know. So we had to just take a little break because we was talking for a whole half an hour without taking a music break. I was like, wait a minute. So
it's important, though.
it is a very important conversation. So to just kind of pick up where we left off, some of the historical context, the colonial origin of recognition is a system. It's basically a tool of control, of that recognition and that blood quantum to eventually make us not exist so they don't have to deal with us no more. And then they can just have the land and do whatever they want, because we care about what's being done to the earth. You're not just going to bulldoze everything, dig it up.
We don't want a Walmart over there.
Put a parking lot, and it just shows how recognition has been weaponized to divide the indigenous community, because it's created almost like a hierarchy. It's like, oh, well, you're not federally recognized, Oh, well, you're not state recognized. Oh, you only know your lineage. It's like, and it puts walls up instead of it being a welcoming environment.
Instead of developing bridges.
Yes. And then I feel like that's the issue. And then when you try to come together to get anything accomplished on like the state or like government level that's for everybody, you can't even get anything like any type of output because it's too many internal issues in the way to, just be successful. If people can't look at the bigger picture to like get this done or whatever opportunity it is, because of the internal divide is, it's a big issue.
Yeah. And, I just want to, before we move forward, I just want to, this key message, right? The key message. And this is crazy because this is what they spit to us. Recognition is a colonial construct that often determines survival, but does not define authenticity. That's crazy. The fact that they themselves would acknowledge and state that, and then we as the community still allow that structure to, it's crazy.
Yeah.
So we need to move on to the next segment.
Yeah. So now we're going to be talking about indigenous identity versus tribal enrollment.
Ooh-wee. You ready for this one? The facts are the facts, though. We're going to just talk about the facts here, right? So, let's go.
The distinction between indigenous, which is cultural identity, heritage, and a lived experience, and tribal enrollment, legal governments, colonial criteria. And I will also say indigenous still being on the land, the original land and place of your people is probably the main, that should have been first.
well, again, we're talking about, this is from them.
Right. Well,
so they're not going to educate us, right? Or even talk to us as if we would know that their stuff is limited and that there are higher forms of authority for us to live by, to move through earth, to use as legal standing. But we'll get into that. Go ahead.
Right. And so blood quantum and enrollment, examining their controversial origins and implications.
We talked about it a little bit.
We lightly touched, but just some I've seen and experienced some personal issues with that, with some of the young people in our tribe and, just the young community with, seeing their whole family participate and, go to functions, but they don't have a tribal ID because that's how it's been set up. You want that ID too.
Yeah, you want to be acknowledged as part of the group.
Right,
especially when they're your family, you hanging out with them. Y'all living together.
Right.
Y'all doing the same thing, but because this person's 1/4 removed, he can't get it. But that's my cousin, though.
Literally. And so personal stories or community examples demonstrating how enrollment rules can exclude genuine indigenous people, while community acceptance and cultural knowledge are integral. Ooh, get out of here.
Beyond paperwork.
Beyond paperwork is a gnat flying all around me, y'all. I'm sorry. Beyond the paperwork or BIA status.
Now, interesting. And so as we start to go through these things, again, I want to just really start from the top, right? Indigenous identity versus tribal enrollment. And that is a difference. And again, like you have stated, I talked about it earlier when we said that defining terms, right? These non-federal, non-state people use terms that are outside of the United States definition. Indigenous being a term that is outside of the United States definition. The United States, if you look in the law books, the United States does not define indigenous.
Okay.
Because they cannot.
Okay.
They can define what a native is. They can define what an Indian is because they got to it. However, on a world level, indigenous is already defined and has legal standing. And so the United States chooses to call its indigenous population Indian or Native so that they can define that group and then control that group. But if you're indigenous, the United States they have a separate set of rules that they have to abide by in how they interact, how they can, interact with you in a legal way and all of that kind of jazz. Whereas tribal enrollment, is one where you're a tribe if you still have the connection to your culture, your language, if you're still existing as a native group, but you've been moved off your land.
Right.
And so the Lenape people that were moved to Oklahoma, they still can be native, they can be Indian, but they cannot be indigenous. Okay. And so they don't have the rights that would be articulated to indigenous peoples. They're tribal people.
On an international level.
On an international level. And so indigenous peoples have the ability to reinstitute, restructure their tribe, their government, and their way of life. And the United Nations and the world body politics has a avenue by which indigenous peoples can go about that route. Mm-hmm. But if you're a tribe or if you're an Indian in the United States, then you have already acquiesced that control and you're considered, as they stated, a dependent state. And so you are, those rights that are prescribed to indigenous peoples are not prescribed to you. And so if you're federally recognized and they want to run if they want to run an oil pipeline through your sacred grounds, but and you're federally recognized tribe, they have the authority to do that. But if you're indigenous, then the United States would have to go to an international court and fight and have that legal battle because they supposedly, legally, they don't have the right to take control over that land.
Mm-hmm. I wonder if a lot of tribes even know that. You know what I mean? Like, if they...
Yeah, people say indigenous all of the time, right? But they don't, most people are unaware of the legal difference between an Indian and an indigenous person. Okay. Yeah, and definitely ain't none of the United States educational system is going to teach this.
Well, that seems like, they absolutely don't want people to know that, because I'm sure tribes would maybe want to go a different route.
Right. I'm sure that they would, right? I personally am moving and doing my best to move our tribe in that direction, right? Where we would be, where we would establish ourselves in the correct venue, in the correct jurisdiction on an international level, and then say, okay, look, the United States is not the same type of conversation. How are we going to go about this and allowing us to redevelop our government? Because, at the end of the day, as an indigenous communities, we have a right to reestablish our governments. It is a lot of stuff, man.
It is. So I would just like to say, we have to remember that identity is not paperwork. Identity is your cultural connection, your connection to the land, your community and your family, because that is the indigenous way. The first day they're going to ask you is who your people, who your folks, who your kin, what's your last name, where you from.
Right, those are the questions, you know what I mean? Because, and if you think about it, when the community has been disrupted by outside force, the only way for the people that have been disrupted to stay connected is through the storytelling, through
the oral history.
Because, I didn't mention it before, but when they talked about the need for the paperwork to verify that you descend from a tribe and this and that, here on the East Coast, they burnt all of that, purposefully burnt all of that, like literally purposefully burnt all of our records.
I know. That's like that show we were about to watch on YouTube. And then when he was asking the question, where are all the ancient artifacts in North America? He was like, if you go to Europe, you go to South America, you see all these
everything,
great
everywhere.
structures, and it's because they were destroyed when they were colonizing the East Coast. They destroyed everything.
They even used to pay people. So, we used to have mounds. Some of the things, we were building mounds up until the 1700s, indigenous peoples on the East Coast.
Okay.
And so when they say they don't know who the mound builders were, yes, they do. They just don't want to acknowledge who they were, because they will say in their books these people were building mounds until the 1700s. Who was here in the 1700s? Well, I know my people was here in the 1700s. Was your people here in the 1700s?
Yeah, we were.
Yeah, okay. And so,
I think on the ancestry, I know, and let me finish my sentence, but I want to say it out loud so I don't forget this second thought. Ancestry.com, we can see, I think it's like 14 something. I can't remember, but all the way back. But I've been seeing people use the ancestry to connect family with the southeastern tribes, which has been very useful, because some people that don't have the census records, somebody else might have it. You can kind of connect the lines and find your lineage.
Yeah.
So, in that sense, it has been useful, to kind of find that paperwork, because so much of it was destroyed. You can see the same person, just their whole ethnicity changed, their race change on papers. Some crazy stuff going on. The government always going government.
They are.
They are consistent with that. That's the one thing they are consistently going to do. They're going to manipulate and do what they do.
Well, you know what? Let's take another break right here, right? And then when we get back, we can kind of like wrap it up by saying, okay, look, we really touching the surface. There's so much.
I know we're gonna have to do a part 2 for this, because we still got
too many.
3 more segments.
3 more segments.
3 more segments. So we're gonna have to maybe to be continued, because by the time the show is over, we only gonna be done segment 2. So we definitely gonna come back to this, and hopefully next time we could have our YouTube working.
Yeah, right.
Technology is hating us. I was like, is Mercury in retrograde?
Not
like, what is going on?
Actually, it is not. It's time to go. It's actually, guess what it is about to be?
What?
It's about to be Gemini season, y'all.
Oh, watch out now.
No, so we're going to play this song real quick, and when we get back, let's talk about how we can start to build bridges in our community. And we'll start there. So much.
It's the same hustle, it's the same thing, the same tears don't make the
we fade. Maybe one day we'll see we're one big family, like it's one at all. It's the same sunshine, it's the same rain, the same struggle just to maintain. Maybe one day we'll see we're one big family, like it's one at all. Yeah. Somebody found working fingers to the bone. Somebody got a cousin getting that thug feels alone. Somebody fam got weight on the block, AKs on the block, might spray on the block, y'all. Somebody fam still on welfare, oh yeah. Somebody on the grind for daycare, oh yeah. You got hugging in your family tree, then somebody out there kidding me. Everybody say it's the same hustle, same thing, same tears on that we pay. Maybe one day we'll see we're one big family, like it's one at all. It's the same sunshine, it's the same rain, the same struggle just to maintain. Maybe one day we'll see we're one big family, like it's one at all. Yeah. Somebody fam got a Benz on tens. Somebody push a bucket with a car full of friends. Somebody fam locked up, trying to get blinged up, trying to flip green up, couldn't give the street up, y'all. Somebody fam pray for better days, cause somebody fam died yesterday. Tired of pouring out this Hennessy for somebody out there kidding me. Hey, hey, somebody fam finally made it to the top. Somebody fam reaching back to the block. Somebody fam bring the light to the block. Spin stacks on the block. We're all that we got, y'all. Somebody fam help the hood come up. Somebody fam show the gang show love. If somebody feeling harmony, then somebody out there kidding me. Everybody say, yeah, same thing, same tears on that we fade. Maybe one day we'll see we're one big family.
Hey, hey, welcome back, y'all.
Welcome back to Save Our Ancestors Indigenous Radio.
Right. So, we're going to just wrap up and kind of give our closing thoughts. You know, we talked about some heavy stuff. And we definitely, this is a to be continued.
Yeah, we just glanced over some things for real. Yeah, man, you know what? You got me stuck. I don't know.
So let's talk about what some things we can do to heal the divide.
Okay.
You know, the building of unity. And of course, we'll talk about this again when we continue. But, you know, kind of quickly.
Always collaborate with each other, right?
Yes, but we have to acknowledge those colonial systems that were put in place to do exactly what we're letting it do, you know, divide us. And I just hope, you know, that people start to wake up to see, like, we are glorifying the things that they gave us to destroy us. You know what I mean? You're upholding your literal destruction. Like it's gold, you know what I mean? Or like a Fabergé egg, like, oh, look at it.
Right.
It's set in place to dismantle us.
And we allowing it to, you know, and it's time for us, right? And I guess that's one of the things that I hope that we try to do here, right? Is to, you know, put out the energy of collaboration. And, you know, we know, listen, everybody's not going to like you, right? That's not the point here. But that doesn't mean that we can't work together to uplift our community.
Correct.
You know,
Correct.
You know, I do a lot of cleanups and stuff. You know, I like to do that. And I was telling somebody, like, yo, look, I live in the neighborhood. Man, we've been in the same neighborhood for 70 years. I guarantee you it's been a few people that I've been in that neighborhood that we ain't like each other, right? But as a grown person, when I'm doing my cleanups, if I see somebody that I don't like that want to come and help me clean the block up because they don't want their child to fall on the glass and cut their leg, just like I don't want my child to fall on the glass and cut the leg, then that's what we're going to do. We're going to clean the street up together, right? And that's a start, because at least we know, look, we looking out for the children. As an indigenous community, particularly here in Philadelphia, I think we should start doing that. We should start supporting each other. We should start showing up to our events. And because that's a great start.
Yeah, it's kind of to show internal unity, and that's the big problem because it's completely lacking. You know,
You know what else too, though? You know, and that's a thing that I think that we need to really do, particularly here on the East Coast, particularly with Native Americans from the West Coast that come to the East Coast and then look at someone like myself and be like, but you're brown. How could you be Indian? Right? But then we'll look at a lighter skinned person and accept them as an Indian because they not brown, even if they have more white admixture in it than the Indian admixture. And so that's a whole nother thing that, you know, we can talk about that keeps us divided even here in Philadelphia.
Absolutely.
We got about 8 minutes left. Let me read to you some of the examples. I did not bring my flute with me.
Oh.
I don't think I brought my flute with me. I'll check while y'all do that. Right. Let's talk about some of the things, right? So collaborative advocacy, right, for cultural preservation and environmental stewardship. I think that we try to do that here on this show, right?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, our last show, we were talking about, you know, different things going on the East Coast as far as like just terrible practices by the government to steal land, to destroy sacred sites. You know, and I feel like even here with the cleanups, that's environmental stewardship. You know, we're still taking care of Mother Earth. You know, we have to keep her clean. And, you know, teaching our children not to litter. You know, they should be outraged when they see somebody throw something on the streets. Like my kids, oh, what are you doing? But also promoting inclusive cultural events like powwows, education. We have community fire circles. You know, just to kind of introduce in a unstructured, you know, not like sitting in a classroom, you know, a slice of our culture. You know, we also have to decolonize our understanding of identity and belonging. You know,
that's a big one right there.
It definitely is.
It is.
Because, you know, people will take for face value
lookership.
How you look, right? How you look.
Lookership.
Just like what's that man? He was Italian with the tear falling down his face because he had the look that what people think
a Mexican,
a Native American person looks like. You know, but he was He was Italian.
I don't remember. His
he
name,
was like the face of. I think it was like in the 70s or the 80s.
Everybody,
with that tear falling down.
He was Italian.
He was Italian.
I thought he was Mexican.
No, he was Italian.
Okay. Well, listen, if an Italian can be a Native American, why can't a brown person like me be Native American?
That's a whole nother topic of discussion.
Well, you know, I mean, I've been told that many a times here in Philadelphia, right? It's like, come on. Despite my bloodline, you know, and so, again, things for us to talk about, right? You know, because just like you know your bloodline to the 1400s. Interesting enough, my tribe was actually the first tribe to be contacted by a European settlement here. And that was down off the Carolina. You know, it was called Florida at the time, but in 1526, well, actually, it was 1516, 1512 when DeSoto and Ponce was going through.
Ponce de Leon.
Yeah, they was going through my tribal area, and guess what they was doing? They were slaving us, and you know they took up to 6,000 of us back into Europe and put us into the Mediterranean slave trade.
That made me think of my 5th grade teacher, Miss Whitlock. I wonder how she's doing, or she's still with us. She was an awesome history teacher. She had Ed Bradley come to our classroom.
That's cool. Okay.
Yes. And she knew the actress from Coming to America. Yeah. Like, we was like, oh my God, Miss Whitlock, like, you know, all these people. But she told us the real about, I'm doing air quotes, explorers, you know, and
they were slavers.
Yes.
They were slavers more than anything. The explorers came in the 1800s and the 1900s when they started to profit off of education. But that's a whole nother conversation. We only got a few minutes left, right? About 3-4 minutes. Is there anything that you would like to share with our community before we leave today?
I would like to say, community, to keep your head up.
For sure.
Man, the news is just crazy every day.
Mm-hmm.
I get out and enjoy this weather.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I don't think it's going to be raining this weekend. But don't get too caught up in the political stuff if you can, because it'll take you down a rabbit hole. You know, enjoy your family.
Yeah, let's tell them, look, this is what you can do. You can invite listeners, right? We can invite y'all to reflect on your own understanding of Indigenous identity and community, right? How do you feel about that? And then have that conversation. Because, and again, we have to remember and we that around the time that we were born, our parents weren't allowed to have this conversation in public. You know,
exactly.
Literally, we could not talk about this out loud. And so we got to be thankful to be able to talk about this out loud and then be comfortable with being able to actually do that, right?
All right, I'm gonna close with this thought.
Go ahead.
Our identities are not gifts from colonizers. They're gifts from our ancestors.
That's a good one.
So we don't need y'all to tell us what we are, because we know, because our family told us.
Listen, I'm definitely going to trust my mama word over the system's word, particularly right now. But man, this, you know what? We could talk about it another day.
What song we going out to?
We're going to go off with Passion. Follow your passion, y'all.
Here we go. Enjoy your weekend.
You're listening to Save Our Ancestors, where heritage, healing, and truth meets the mic.
Peace.